elections?
Well, first of all, I think it's the best job in the world. I really do. Representing the United States is truly the best job. I think the thing that I liked about it the best was representing the United States and being able to use the power of the United States on behalf of good. And there were many wonderful moments, and we were talking a little bit about this at lunch. I think the thing I'm proudest of doing was making sure that ethnic cleansing ended in Kosovo. And so my greatest moment, I think, was going to Pristina, the capital of Kosovo, after the war was over and seeing huge crowds of people, all of them with signs that said, "Thank you, USA, thank you, USA," and "Thank you, Albright." And it was just a great moment. And there is a whole generation of little girls in Kosovo whose first name is Madeleine. And so I really do feel particularly great about that. But every day was terrific. And I think I understand how Secretary Rice feels at this moment. Around this time, I kept trying to extend the days. I think she's doing the same thing, flying around the world counterclockwise, so that you really can spend all the time you have trying to finish the job that you started.
Again, just because we have such limited time, before we move on to today's headlines, any regrets, any one mission that you think, if only I could do it over again?
I think my biggest regret, and I think it's President Clinton's also, is that we weren't able to really bring the Middle East peace talks to a conclusion, because we came very, very close at Camp David and after. But I think that's the biggest regret, because that struggle keeps going on. I believe that any American president at any time has to expect the unexpected. The American people made a stunning decision to elect Barack Obama in terms of what it has meant for the change of, as I said, for the American image. So I think people knew what they were talking about.
Now, you understand how Washington works. You've alluded to it, but sometimes folks who are not from Washington have a difficulty understanding how, on the campaign trail, things are said between presidential candidates. In this case, we're referring to Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton. Ultimately, Obama wins, and Ms. Clinton said that on the campaign trail that he wasn't ready to be president. They had some differences on foreign policy. How does it come full circle where she now becomes his Secretary of State?
Well, I do think that a lot of things are said during primary campaigns, and we are in Bush country here. I do think that there were times during the Bush-Reagan campaign when at that stage, Bush later became vice president, and so I think this is what happens. People say things, and then they decide that they need to develop a team. I believe that what has happened will make it very evident that Secretary Clinton, I have to get used to that, and President Obama will in fact find a great deal in common, that they have a very similar worldview. What I like very much, and I must say, not to just keep advertising my book, but I did say what I wanted to see was a confident president rather than a certain president. A confident president can have people with strong and different views around him, and then wants to hear those views and then make up his mind based on his own principles. And I think that's what you're going to see. And yesterday, President-elect Obama, when kind of asked a similar question, said that he expects Secretary Clinton to speak out, but that he has set the stamp and the buck stops on his desk. So I think there will be the presentation of strong views, from which I think a president truly benefits, because if everybody just says yes sir, you do get involved in groupthink and you end up in a place you don't want to be.
Now, Senator, or now President-elect Barack Obama, is a relatively young man. He doesn't have an extraordinarily long service of record in public office. So to some degree, he does lack some experience. I read from history books, for instance, that when John F. Kennedy was elected president and he had to visit with Russia's Nikita Khrushchev, that Khrushchev, being an older, more wily type politician, sort of tried to stronghold or twist his arm or intimidate him. And at some point, according to the history versions, he might have been initially successful, but then President Kennedy found his back and sort of stood up to him. Is that the kind of thing that Barack Obama is also going to be facing?
You know, I think what's very interesting is John Kennedy was my first vote, so he seemed relatively old to me. Now Barack Obama is the same age as my children, so I'm having a little bit of trouble here. But what did happen, and it's interesting you should ask the question that you did, because 2 weeks ago I was asked to introduce the president of Russia, Medvedev. He is 43 years old. And I made a point of saying that the United States is about to inaugurate its 44th president and turn power over peacefully, only country in the world that's ever done that. But as I looked at Medvedev and Obama, I said that clearly there is a new generation of leaders, and as an old lady, I really wish them well. I do think that this is a huge generational shift. I think that there will be a variety of encounters where people will take each other's measure. And as far as I'm concerned, Barack Obama will measure up very, very well. He has, in fact, made his views quite clear. And I think that all leaders around the world will take him very, very seriously.
I think because of our audience here today, I think this next question, I think, is pretty relevant. During the campaign, as often happens, the candidates are, you know, they're throwing everything but the kitchen sink, and sometimes the kitchen sink as well. One of the charges that they threw as sort of derogatory and the reason why you should not vote for Barack Obama was they said he was a Muslim. And that was a charge that they kept repeating, even though it was not true. And it wasn't until, I guess, at some point during the campaign when Colin Powell came out and expressed his support for Barack Obama, and in doing so, his remarks included, they say he's a Muslim, and he's not. But even if he were, so what? And he referenced a young Muslim soldier, Muslim American soldier who had given his life in combat and was, I think, buried with honors. Anyway, so that was a point. What did you make about those charges where they tried to persistently say in a negative tone to say that he was Muslim and that was a reason why you shouldn't vote for him?
Well, I think it was very, very unfortunate, and I do think that what Secretary Powell said, I was very glad that he endorsed Barack Obama, but the context of how he did it, I think, was even more significant for the very reasons that you have pointed out. I think that part of the problem has been, and I would hope that as a result of the work of the Gulen Institute and others, that people don't automatically identify Muslim with terrorists. That's what's happened. And I think that it is very, very important. I never liked kind of the terms of Islamo-fascists or the various kinds of combinations of adjectives and nouns that have been pulled together. And I think people were operating on a fear factor. And therefore, I think that of the many services that General Powell has given to our country, the way he framed that endorsement, I think, was absolutely crucial, and I hope people keep repeating that.
I think it was very effective, ultimately. You are in a better position than the entire citizens of the United States simply because you served as Secretary of State. So let me ask you this next question. There are some people, detractors or non-supporters of the Bush administration, who would make the argument that over the last 8 years, because of the policies of President Bush, because of the war in Iraq and all of the things that have happened over the last 8 years, that America has lost some of its prestige and some of its standing overseas. Do you believe that is accurate? And if so, why?
Well, let me say that if I had an opportunity to change places with any other country in the world, I would not do it. I would prefer to be the United States and play our hand of cards and represent this country. You know, there's no question about that. And I think that it is the best country to be a member of, a citizen of, and I really fully believe it. But I do think that the Bush administration did, in fact, damage the reputation of the United States. And when I was growing up, when people talked about the United States, they'd kind of say Omaha Beach or the Marshall Plan. Unfortunately, a lot of people now, when you think about the United States, say Guantanamo Bay or Abu Ghraib. We lost our moral authority.